of applause. Welcome him to the stage.
Good afternoon. I'm here today to tell you a little bit about what's happening in the US marketplace, and this is particularly focused on broadcasters, so the story will be particularly intriguing, interesting to broadcasters rather than agencies, so just a forewarning. One of the big problems that we're facing in the US is fragmentation, and the US broadcasters are beginning to coalesce around different solutions to solve the problem of fragmentation. Everyone talks about digital taking over TV's lunch. Really, it's fragmentation that's the challenge. I'm here today to talk about what we're doing about it. So just a little bit of context. In the US, the national media, TV and video, is broken into television, about $44 billion. It's pretty flat, no growth. Video is more interesting, 20% growth, very healthy marketplace that, about $12 billion today, this year. Local media, which is selling into DMAs and also cable operators selling in cable zones, that's $21 billion today, about 8% growth in all digital at the local level. And pretty much that's going to be powered by mobile in the next couple of years. So again, local television is pretty much flat. So it's a share game. You've got to win share by offering a better product than your peer, your competitor, to the agencies. So there's a couple of growth spots in the television advertising business. So live TV, interesting areas are audience-targeted television, where you've got typical spots, but you're layering on interesting data now through lookalike modeling, through return path data being applied to the television advertising, and set-top box addressable, where you can apply household characteristics and serve particular ads to particular households. So this is mostly enabled by the cable and satellite operators today. Non-live television has a huge growth story, so targeted VOD and targeted over-the-top, managed by the TV companies. So this isn't like YouTube or something like that. This is actual TV content that's being delivered through IP pipes to the home. So there's a great story there around targeting to the locality and demographics, and addressable, so actually knowing precisely which household receives which ad. So as I said, fragmentation is a big problem. Fragmentation of audiences is typically what you think of, but the fragmentation comes in many forms. So I've listed some here. So just more channels, more content. The proliferation of content over the past couple of years in the US. If you go to the US and you tune in to a typical cable set-top box, there's hundreds of channels. So what am I supposed to watch? How do I aggregate these audiences up and sell them as a package to the advertiser when it's spread over so many properties? More devices, so being able to watch on the television, but also being able to watch on an app on your television, your mobile device, etc. How do you aggregate all those audiences together to form a package to sell to the agencies? Targeting options. I talked about addressable, zone-based targeting, national targeting, audience-based targeting. So in the past couple of years, those have really begun to flourish. Transaction models, private marketplace models, audience marketplace, unwired network, all of those are causing fragmentation. And then audience definitions. So secondary audiences that you're selling, pet owners or car intenders, are really causing an issue with the systems today. So any one of those sounds solvable, but all of them together are really causing an issue. And it's almost as though the frog is boiling in the pot in the US. All of these have come about at more or less the same time. Maybe because of digital and the digital modes of buying creeped into TV. The cable operators came out with new products. So all of these are really compounding the issue in TV today. So what are broadcasters doing about it? And I say broadcasters, but actually it's agencies because they work in partnership all the time. And yeah, there's a simple model that I show capturing 3 buckets of innovation. And they really need to work hand in hand. If you only come up with business rules but don't have automation, audience data, you've got a problem. And vice versa, any one of these. So audience data, there's lots of innovation going on in the US using return path data, ACR data from smart TVs, Nielsen's coming up with a fusion of their panel and set-top box data. So there's lots of innovation happening in this space. It's all kind of uncoordinated, and that's causing a problem. Around the business rules, obviously if you want to enable those transaction models, you need to have business rules in place and much more control over what your sellers are selling and how they're selling it. So today, the sellers are more or less free to add in new terms or new business rules into their proposals for clients and negotiate them. That's maybe going to be a thing of the past. Maybe it's going to be a button that they check for business rules. And there's only a set number of business rules that they can apply. And then campaign automation, business rules, audience data, what good is it if the automation isn't there to deliver the advertising? And so there's a big, heavy lift going on around automation in the marketplace. So all 3 of those together create the opportunity to enable yield and revenue optimization. So yield optimization for your inventory as the broadcaster, and revenue, yield optimization, sorry, for the agency, and revenue optimization for yourself as a broadcaster. And really, it's the partnership appearing here between the agency and the broadcaster, and being able to optimize to the benefit of both parties. You could say that's the Holy Grail. Many people have called different Holy Grails in the TV industry, addressable, etc. But I think that's kind of the focus at the moment in the US, and we're definitely not there yet. So how are broadcasters collaborating with their peers and with the platforms that are available, data platforms, programmatic platforms, etc., to enable this change? So I drew the soap bubble diagram to show kind of how the broadcasters are organizing themselves. Like a couple of big ones are getting together to do this initiative, and then a small group is doing that initiative. So it's more or less market-driven forces. There isn't any grand plan behind this. But you'll find these pockets of innovation are really having an effect on the industry, and other people are buying into their progress. So the drivers for consolidation are common needs. Obviously, the agencies are all asking for audience data in buys, so there's common pressure coming down from the buyers. This is very important, where scale counts. So it's no good differentiating your broadcaster if no one else is using the solution, and the agency has to build some customized algorithm to understand the package that you're offering. So scale counts. That's how you get acceptance at the agencies. Areas with less differentiation. So you may have a secret sauce as a broadcaster that you want to offer, or you have a special agency relationship with it, which is your secret sauce. So now you want to differentiate based on that secret sauce, but leave the operational grunt work, the sausage making, up to the consortium of broadcasters. So it's really making a strategic decision around what is my core and what is I can share with others. And lastly, shared cost and risk. So no one wants to make a bet on themselves and be wrong at the end of the day. So they always like to have people in the mix with them. So some of the strategies that they're employing in the US, obviously standards, that's a pretty obvious one. Audience standards, transaction standards, automation standards. Pretty obvious one. It's typically championed by the broadcasters before it's handed off to a standards body to officialize Co-investing, so getting together, pooling money to invest in innovation, a new solution. And then king-making. So that's a bit of an awkward topic. It's essentially selecting a vendor to become the de facto for the industry. So there's risks in that you're obviously limiting the competitiveness of the marketplace for vendors. But on the other hand, you need the scale. And one way to do that is to anoint one of these vendors as the de facto platform that you're going to use. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about what's going on in the States, just a few key words on some key projects. So OpenAP originated with Fox and Turner around standardizing audience segment definitions. And so it's kind of like an independent product group that reports to the agency and the broadcaster and defines the names of the audience segments that are used in programmatic TV buying. So before, it was a complete mess out there. Like Turner would go to IPG and offer pet owners, making it up, and Fox would go and offer pet owners, but it was a completely different pet owner based on different data, different calculations, didn't equate at all. So that OpenAP is trying to standardize all of that. Project Thor emerging, it's very small at the moment, but it's trying to standardize TV attribution metrics across many of the US broadcasters. It's going fairly well, haven't heard much from the team in a while. And Simmer's been around to improve cross-screen and come up with an alternate currency. So good old Nielsen and ComScore are the two measurement currencies in the US, and they weren't quite meeting the broadcasters' needs. So the broadcasters got together with the agencies and said, let's form a group to push the envelope, to put pressure on Nielsen and ComScore to begin to conform to what we want to have, not what they're telling us their product is going to provide. That's been reasonably successful over 7 years, but yeah, not much has come out of that. Then all three projects I've actually been spearheaded or been involved in. The TIP initiative is a current project for broadcasters where we're trying to standardize the transaction rules and interfaces between buyer and seller, both on the buying side, but then particularly on the stewardship side, because there's a bit of a mess happening today with changes during the campaign life cycle and campaigns running out of whack, and agency credits make goods at the end of the campaign that cause a lot of tension. So that's trying to iron out that, but then also innovate. So I talked a little bit about private marketplaces, forward contracts, etc. There's no mechanism today for many of those to happen, apart from the upfronts. And so part of what we're doing is looking at how do we accommodate some of those innovative business models in a standardized workflow that vendors can adopt, agencies and broadcasters can adopt. The second one is ATSC3. I know there's been some talk about ATSC3 in India, so it's slowly beginning to gain momentum in the States. It's really a hybrid television broadcasting standard, but the interesting thing is that it's a very tight collaboration between the broadcaster and the device manufacturer, like the TV manufacturer. And that tight collaboration enables addressable and data collection. So I'm leading a big project in the US around ATSC3 and specifically addressable and data. We're going to build a proof of concept this year with some pretty new technology. And then lastly but not least, Canoe Ventures. This was started about 8 years ago by the big cable operators. And the idea was to aggregate their technology and make it available to programmers. And so that's really working in the VOD and over-the-top space to enable an aggregated marketplace. So that Canoe's pretty successful. I think they've transacted about $10 billion so far. So doing pretty well. So what could we do better? So I know this is the US, what do you care? But just to give you a feel for what's been successful and where the problems are. There's still problems. There's a lot of projects there, but there's still a lot of problems in our business. So audience definition standards, making some progress there, but it's still a mess. If you talk to national broadcasters, they hold their hands up and say, the agencies are asking me for segment definitions that I just don't know what they are, what the agency wants, and I don't know how to get them in a standardized way. A lot of data science, secret sauce, smoke and mirrors in the market today around audience definition. Second is ratings versus impressions. So there's a good news story there that the marketplace is moving to a combination of ratings or impressions. So in fact, there's a number of systems coming available where you can actually toggle. You can view as ratings, you can view as impressions, and impressions is particularly important if you want to go cross-screen. So it's a way to incorporate cross-screen. So making some progress there. 24/7 transaction automation. So a CEO said to me a couple of months ago, you know, James, we're the only product, we seem to be the only product today where people can't go online and buy the product 24/7. It seems ridiculous that we're still beholden to the telephone, to steak dinners, to what have you. So that's a big one as well. Integration of television and over-the-top. Currently, they're two separate universes. You've got a separate team selling television, separate team selling over-the-top and digital. And at the agency, they're also separated. So that needs to come together because over-the-top is growing up quickly and is a viable way to reach consumers. And yield optimization platforms. I mentioned that before, kind of the holy grail. Very difficult to do if you don't have all of this sorted out. So just some takeaways potentially for the Indian marketplace and Indian broadcasters. I think there's a couple of takeaways for me is fragmentation is probably inevitable in your market. It's not here today, but with the launch of 5G, maybe carriers get into the marketplace, that's going to be an issue. Anticipate 3 years ahead. So that's one of the problems in the US market, is that the broadcasters just didn't have the culture of collaboration. So that's why the frog is boiling in the pot. Because they haven't collaborated, it's kind of too late to make friends with your competitor and start a project that you need now. So that's a message for the Indian market. Anticipate 3 years ahead what you need. Then broadcaster leadership. So I've seen this before in the US that they rely on vendors to come to them with the solution, and then they make a selection. That's the way it's always been done. In this case, you guys need to take a leadership position, work with the agencies, come up with a sketch, a concept of what you want, and then shop that out to the vendors and find a vendor that can actually deliver that in terms of audience data, in terms of automation. Vendor partnerships, very important. Like I said, you need to narrow down on a couple of vendors, maybe even one vendor that can deliver the goods, and put all your energy into that basket. Don't faff around with 5 vendors because you'll be here forever. And then, importantly, leapfrogging other markets. So when I look at the US, I've been working in advanced advertising in the US for near on 13 years. And the road has been littered with dead bodies. Companies go under, other companies come about, they go under. So you have an opportunity to really learn from the US market and the English market, for that matter, and try and leapfrog their mistakes and go in there with the right set of interesting products that will delight agencies. I hope you find my talk interesting.
Before we move on to the panel segment, I'm going to open it up to questions. If you have a question, put your hand up in the air. I'll walk up to you. Once again, a very shy audience. I like the way y'all are looking at me. Any questions? No? All right. A huge round of applause. James Sutton, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. One question. Do we have a question at the back also? No? Okay.
Hi, thanks first of all for a really good talk. I have a two-part question. How far do you think we are from TV and OTT, collaborating seamlessly? That's one. And secondly, once this is done, at least in my mind, the progression is this gets done, and then the unification with pure digital marketing can get enabled at a later stage. How do you think this will progress in the next few years?
So there's so many things that need to come together to stitch TV and over the top. There's audience data, there's the concepts of reach extension. So really there's a heavy lift on the research side to know the value of combining over the top and television. On the technology side, there's also a wide gap between the systems. Typically you've got a programmatic or automated TV system, and it doesn't really talk to the over-the-top system. So what you're finding in the US is those connective tissues are tentatively being made today. So these systems can talk to each other, or at least one is the lead decisioning system, the lead brain in deciding how to combine TV and over-the-top, and then it's talking to the traffic system or vice versa. So there's a lot of connectivity that needs to be put in place in terms of data, automation, business rules, the three Venn diagrams. So my prediction on how long it's going to take, for the US market at least, there is a lot of effort going into connecting those over the next 2 or 3 years, because over the top has just shot up in terms of consumption. So it's an urgent issue. Here in India, I hear that over the top is a lot less prevalent, so maybe it's less urgent for you to weave them together at this point.